Hello and welcome to Narayana IS Institute. Students, I am Pratik, your faculty for Daily News Analysis. Now students, as part of Daily News Analysis, we shall be discussing 5 important topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. So let's have a quick glance of the topics that we shall be discussing today. The first article is taken from Hindu, page number 9. Now this article talks about the coalition government and whether the coalition governments would help in economic growth and the challenges associated with the coalition government. So as the BJP or our country is back to the coalition era, the article focuses on the coalition government and its challenges and benefits. The second article is taken from Hindu, page number 10. Now this article talks about China's grey zone warfare tactics against Taiwan. Now given that China and Taiwan are facing issues, this article focuses on how China is using different tactics to pressurize Taiwan. The third article is taken from Hindu, page number 1. Now in this article we shall be discussing about a legislation called Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act, that is POCSO Act. The fourth article is taken from Indian Express, page number 7. Now here the Confederation of Indian Industry has recommended the government a few steps to boost economic growth, especially with respect to increasing the capital expenditure. So we shall be discussing what is Confederation of Indian Industry as a body. The fifth article is taken from Hindu, page number 12. Now this article states that the Director General of Foreign Trade has advocated for the continuation of the equalization, the interest equalization scheme. So we are going to understand DGFT as a body and interest equalization scheme. So these are the 5 topics that we shall be discussing today, and finally we shall be discussing few practice questions so that you understand the type of questions that can be expected in the UPSC examination. So let's get started, students. Students, the first topic that we shall be discussing is, do coalition governments slow down the economic reforms agenda? Now in this article you need to understand coalition governments and whether they are good for the economic development of a country or they hinder the economic growth of a country, right? You can map this topic under GS paper 2. So what is the context? As I said, okay, let's go to a PYQ 1 first. The constitutional government means, and these are the 4 options. So please go through these 4 options and try to answer this particular question. So here again, constitutional government means the government which is formed on the basis of the provisions of the constitution, which means in the constitution there are certain rules mentioned as in how the government should perform or function. So here you see that the government D or the option D, a government limited by the terms of the constitution, which means the government does not have absolute power. Right, such type of questions can be asked in the examination. So what is the context? As I told you that the question or the authors of the article are trying to discuss if the coalition governments hinder the economic growth of a country or they support the economic growth of a country. Let's try to understand whether the coalition governments help or they hinder the economic development. So what is coalition government? First and foremost, the coalition government means that 2 or more political parties are coming together to form the government. Let's say, for example, Lok Sabha has 500 members. And to form the government, you need 251 members support. Now, no political party has got, let's say, 251. So here, what do we do is, let's say, for example, BJP has got 200. And the other political parties have got, let's say, 15, 20, 25, 30. Or in the current 2024 general elections that concluded recently, the outcome was such that out of 543, you need 272 seats to win the government. No political party was in a position to secure 272 seats. BJP, it got around 242 seats, right? Then the other allies of BJP like TDP, the Janata Dal United, these parties got some 16 plus 12. So here BJP has formed an alliance with TDP and JDU. And thus they have formed the government. This is known as coalition government. Now the coalition government involves negotiation and compromise, which means whenever decisions are to be taken, here the BJP has to consult with the TDP and the JDU political parties. Why? Because they have provided support to the Bharatiya Janata Party. And this is how the policies are made and implemented, which means here it involves negotiation. Now, instances of coalition government. Now, until 2014, the Indian state had experienced coalition government for 21 years. For example, in the 1970s, we had the Janata Party coalition government. Then during 1990s, we had the United Front and the National Front coalition governments. Then from 2004 to 2014, we had the UPA, United Progressive Alliance coalition government. Right? But in 2014, the BJP got majority. BJP was the single largest political party. It was able to secure majority on its own. 2019 happened the same thing, but again in that 2024, we are returning back to the coalition era, right? Now, does coalition government help in making efficient and effective policies? First, we'll discuss how the coalition government actually helps, and then we can discuss the challenges associated with the coalition government. First and foremost, the coalition government involves competing ideas and policy compromises. Which means, as I told you, when more than one political party are involved, here negotiations take place. There are competing ideas. For example, just because the single largest political party cannot assert its decisions on the other political parties. Competing ideas are involved at the same time. At times, the largest political party has to make compromise with respect to policy. But this might eventually lead to decisions being taken in a transparent manner. Now, let me just give you one example. When the UPA coalition government was in power, right, it was led by Dr. Manmohan Singh. Now, this UPA government had supporters like, let's say, the Trinamool Congress, right, or let's say the NCP of Maharashtra. Now, UPA under the leadership of Manmohan Singh wanted to sign TISTA agreement with Bangladesh. And the Prime Minister of our country, Dr. Manmohan Singh, was on his visit to Bangladesh. But at the last moment, the Trinamool Congress of West Bengal did not support the UPA to go ahead with the TISTA water agreement. That's the reason TISTA water agreement could not be signed with Bangladesh. This means that the coalition government, it involves conflicting ideas, competing ideas, at the same time policy compromises. This is how, though the Congress had got highest number of seats, but again they had to rely on the other political parties, which means they had to, at times they have to compromise their policies. But here, having the coalition partners, which means they check and balance the decisions of the political party getting the maximum number of seats, which means coalition governments involves checks and balances. Economic liberalization, which was undertaken in 1991, was advanced under various coalition governments, right? Then the negotiations with coalitions led to less radical change but more policy stability, right? So having coalition partners would eventually lead to the policies being taken which are stable, and this can also help in the long-term investments, right? Then performance of the past coalition governments. Now, no major policy reversals undertook or were taken since 1991. There were changes. No, I'm not saying that there were no changes. The changes were incremental, but no drastic or major decision was taken post 1991. Now, under the coalition governments, institutionalized decision-making mechanism in coalitions accommodate diverse voices. For example, during VP Singh when he was a Prime Minister, right, 27% reservation was given to the OBCs. Of that matter, during the Atal Bihari Vajpayee's tenure, group of ministers, now this was a platform meant to deal with the complicated issues, or it was a platform wherein different political parties came together to negotiate, to discuss over a particular policy and thus find a solution. So the best thing of coalition governments is that this platform or this system allows different voices to be heard. And the coalition governments have been effective in facilitating reforms compared to some unilateral decisions taken by the single largest political party, which means having coalition governments would push the government to undertake reforms. Then talking about economic growth and reform. Now, economic growth requires reforms, and reforms often requires decisiveness, right? Now, decisiveness is often associated with these single party governments. So, for economic reforms or for economic growth, you need reforms. For reforms, you need decisiveness. And for decisiveness, you need a single political party. However, the effectiveness of coalition governments is influenced by the negotiation process. Now, during the negotiation process, various different points are heard by the coalition partners, which means no one voice is being dominated, different voices are being heard, and based on that, decisions are taken. So, these are some of the advantages of running or having a coalition government. There are checks and balances. There are reforms. Reforms will be undertaken every often. But now talking about challenges. Now, as I told you that the coalition governments involve negotiations, policy bargaining, and that's the reason at times it takes a lot of time to frame any policy. The decision making gets affected. Why? Because a lot of time is being consumed to take a decision. Why? Because in the coalition governments, different voices need to be heard. So, decisions get delayed. At times, it can also lead to turbulence in policy making. Why? Because different interests are involved. For example, the Janata Party government during the 1970s tried to implement many policies pro-poor, right? But unfortunately, they did not get support from different political parties. Same is the case with Rajiv Gandhi. When Rajiv Gandhi government tried to liberalize the economy, though Rajiv Gandhi had the majority, but because of the internal differences, Rajiv Gandhi could not move with the economic liberalization. Then the center-state relations and revenue sharing. Now, coalition governments would mean that the role of the state would increase in their decision making. But, so it's a good thing. But the issue might arise when it comes to dividing the taxes, division of taxes between the center and states. Now, given that we have GST and given the way the states are complaining that our revenues have taken a hit post the introduction of GST, this point becomes very, very important. Then the economic vision and decision making. Now, the coalition partners generally support economic reforms, but differences may arise in the pace, the speed, and the style of decision making. Again, delaying or delayed decision making. Then federalism and centralization. Now, what is federalism? The division of power between the center and the states, right? Now, the promises, now for a country to function effectively, there has to be cooperation between the center and the state. This is known as cooperative federalism. But this cooperative federalism has faced challenge. Why? Because of the centralization, increased centralization and decision making of the central government. The discontent arises from the central government's greater share of revenue and limited role for the state in negotiations. So, these are some of the challenges associated with the coalition governments. Now, if you compare that with the single party governments, right? Now, the single party, as I told you, they can make swift decisions without the need for prolonged negotiations. For example, in 2014, Insolvency Bankruptcy Code, GST, such laws were passed. Why? Because the government or the political party had got maximum number of seats or highest seats in the government. But as I told you, the single party governments may bypass extensive consultation. At times, the governments, under hubris, excessive pride, they might not rely on having negotiations with the other stakeholders. This can lead to decisions which might not be healthy for a country. For example, in 2020, 3 farm laws were introduced by the government. It was not well received. People protested in large numbers, and finally the government had to take back the decision. Now, having one party or domination of one party in the government can also lead to weakening of the institutions like CBI, ED, Election Commission of India. So this single party governments would try to influence the decisions of these bodies. Right? So the conclusion is that no doubt the coalition government has got both advantages and disadvantages in economic reforms. The coalition governments, they ensure inclusiveness and stability. But again, the effectiveness of the government in economic reform depends on the decision-making process, how the decisions are taken, the institutional frameworks, the importance of institutions, the role of institutions, and the broader economic and the political context. So, which means the coalition governments is good as well as bad now, but it depends on the larger context. I hope students have understood the article. Students, the title of the next topic is China's Grey Zone Warfare Tactics Against Taiwan. In this article, you need to understand grey zone warfare tactics and the issue between China and Taiwan. You can map this under GS paper 2. A previous year question, the term two-state is sometimes mentioned in the news in the context of, the answer has to be Israel. Now, this two-state solution calls for the coexistence of two states. One is Israel and the other one is Palestine. Right? So, such type of questions can be asked in the UPSC examination. What is the context? That a new person has become the Taiwanese president. Now, post this person becoming the president of Taiwan, China's response to his, that is the president of China's pro-independence and secessionist statements has been striking, which means China has resorted to sophisticated tactics known as grey zone warfare to frustrate China. Now, students, in order to understand what exactly is brewing in Taiwan, you need to understand the history of China and Taiwan. Now, in 1949, the people of China fought against the dictators or the autocrats of China, known by the name of Qing dynasty. Now, post the end of civil war in China in 1949, there were differences between two important factions. One is the People's Republic of China, or the Communist Party of China, and the second one being KMT. Now, KMT is Kuomintang, led by Chiang Kai-shek. And then we had People's Republic of China, led by Mao Zedong. Now, this Mao Zedong defeated Chiang Kai-shek, and these people, or the supporters of Chiang Kai-shek led Kuomintang, had to flee to Taiwan. Right? So, in Taiwan, we had this government of KMT, and in China, Mao Zedong established People's Republic of China. Now, once China has grown into power and has become a big force, China says that Taiwan is a breakaway province of China. And one day, we Chinese are going to unify Taiwan. Right? So, China routinely protests any foreign dignitaries' visits to Taiwan. So, whenever any foreign countries' dignitaries or officials visit Taiwan, China takes a note of it. And China says that Taiwan is a part of China, which means all the countries in the world should follow one China policy. What is one China policy? There's only one China. There are no two China or two countries. Under one China policy, Taiwan is considered to be a part of China. Right? Now see, this is the map of China. Here we see Taiwan. Now, it's your homework that you need to identify where is Hong Kong. So, try to see Taiwan, South Korea, Japan countries, and try to also find out where is Taiwan Strait. Right? So, this is the map of China and Taiwan. Now, what is grey zone warfare? It refers to tactics that fall between conventional warfare and peace. Now, these tactics are designed to achieve political objectives without triggering a full-scale military war, which means the grey zone warfare tactics include psychological operations, cyber attacks, and other forms of non-kinetic warfare. What is non-kinetic warfare? Where there is no involvement of physical force. Psychological operations, they try to brainwash people, right? They try to intimidate people. They try to hack the systems of other countries. This is known as grey zone warfare tactics. It's psychological operation, right? This is known as gray zone warfare. So again, a question can be asked in prelims as well. So you need to know what exactly is gray zone warfare. Now what is China doing? Now China is trying to ready herself to invade Taiwan. For example, near to the islands of Taiwan, China undertakes regular training drills. So by these drills, China wants to send a message that China has the capability to fight and win. For example, the Chinese have resorted to simulated audiovisuals. For example, a 3D animated video was made showing a scenario where the ballistic missiles were striking Taiwan. So such simulated videos were made. Now this is known as psychological operation, which means by such videos or by such tactics, right? Chinese, they're trying to instill fear in the minds of the people of Taiwan, so that the people of Taiwan should not raise a voice against China. Since 2020, the Taiwanese government has reported that the Chinese fighter jets are making rounds around the Taiwan island. This is not to attack Taiwan, but to only intimidate or exert pressure on Taiwan. So, for example, in Taiwan, people are revolting against the interference of China in Taiwan. The people of Taiwan, they do not want themselves to be considered a part of China. They want to retain their own independence, right? For example, Chinese, no doubt Taiwan has a different government. China has a different government, right? But here, China wants Taiwan to be a part of China. So, a faction of people in Taiwan, they see that China is a different country and we are a different country. We want to maintain our sovereignty. And the interesting part be, USA has given a surety to Taiwan that in case China attacks you, we will come to defend you. So China also uses this carrot and stick policy. For example, there are two political parties. One is Democratic Progressive Party, the other one is Kuomintang. Now this DPP is against China. They want to maintain independence and sovereignty. The KMT is close to China, right? So they want that we should be a part of China. Now, as the DPP political party has come to power, China is using this carrot and stick policy. So if the government in Taiwan listens to China, they offer them incentives or economic help. And if they do not listen to it, then they use stick. Now, what is a stick? For example, China suspended preferential tax rates for chemical imports from Taiwan, right? So the tax benefit that China had given to Taiwan, they have withdrawn that preferential tax benefit. So they are trying to affect or they are trying to hurt the economy of Taiwan. So this is what is going in China and Taiwan. So people in Taiwan want, or a section of people in Taiwan want that they want to maintain their independence and sovereignty. But we also need to understand the Indian perspective on the Taiwan-China tensions. Now, the diplomats or the experts say that India has to strengthen our ties with Taiwan. Now, Taiwan, no doubt, China too, but Taiwan again is a advanced economy, is a developed country. So we have to enhance our economic, technological and cultural exchanges, which can boost our presence, strategic presence in the Indo-Pacific region. So we have to engage more and more with Taiwan. We have to collaborate in areas such as semiconductor, manufacturing, technology and education that can benefit both the nations. India, by enhancing collaboration and cooperation in different areas, can also play a role of promoting regional stability by supporting peaceful resolution to the Taiwan-China issue. And this, by promoting regional stability, we also align this objective with free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. But the experts also state that India has to carefully balance our engagement with Taiwan. We cannot anger China, right? Or we cannot face the wrath of China. So India should maintain its commitment of one China policy, which means India should believe that Taiwan is a part of China. But at the same time, we have to engage more and more with Taiwan. Now, given that the Chinese have been attacking our borders and Chinese have been working with Pakistanis to trouble India, the political analysts or some political analysts are exhorting or clamoring that India should withdraw its one China policy, which means India should stay that we do not recognize one China policy. Why? Because Chinese are violating the border or the ceasefire, the border agreements. They are working with Pakistan to trouble India. They are not respecting India's sovereignty. So, if China is not, or China does not have any concerns for India's, let's say India's point, or let's say India's vulnerabilities, or they are not sensitive of India's vulnerabilities, then we also need to prick China, or let's say tit for tat policy, right? So again, our strategic engagement with Taiwan can enhance our position in the region, also promoting regional stability and peace. I hope students you understood this particular article. Students, the title of the next topic is Yediyurappa may be arrested as POCSO court issues warrant. So in this article, you need to understand what is POCSO Act. You can map this under GS paper 2. A previous question, examine the main provisions of the National Child Policy and throw light on the status of its implementation is the question. Okay. Now, what is the context that the POCSO court, right, has issued arrest warrant against the ex-Chief Minister of Karnataka and his name is Yediyurappa. A case has been filed under the POCSO Act. A mother of a 17-year-old has alleged that the ex-Chief Minister of Karnataka has sexually harassed her daughter. So let's try to understand what exactly is POCSO Act. POCSO, Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act. It was implemented in the year 2012. Why? Because India had ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1992. The purpose is to address the sexual exploitation and abuse of children. So far, until 2012, the penalties or the punishment was not severe. With the law made in the year 2012, the laws were made more strict. The law says or defines a child who is below the age of 18. The law was further amended in the year 2019 to make the penalties more stringent so as to act as a deterrence mechanism. This act is also gender neutral, which means that this act understands and assumes that both boys and girls can be victims. It is not necessary that girls have to be victim every single time. Even the boys can be victims, which means this act is gender neutral. Now, what are the procedural safeguards which can be asked in the pre-examination? Child reporting, child-friendly reporting and investigation procedures. So, whenever the crime is being reported, a friendly atmosphere has to be created. Then it is mandatory to report sexual offences crime. Then recording statements of the child at the child's residence. You cannot call the child to the police station. Then ensuring the presence of a trusted adult during the reporting process. Provisions for medical examination of the child. Establishment of special courts for speedy trials. These are some of the safeguards under the Act. Then dedicated special courts are created under the POCSO Act to ensure expedited trial and child-friendly environment during the trial. And the identity of the child is kept confidential under the POCSO Act. These are some of the provisions. Now, these are some of the terms and definition. Child, any child below the age of 18. What is sexual assault? Now, sexual assault involves the touching the private parts of a child with sexual intent without penetration. Penetration is not involved in the sexual assault. But when it comes to aggravated sexual assault, it includes sexual assault by authority figures like the police, army, the government officials, etc. on victims. When it comes to penetrative sexual assault, it involves the penetration of the penis, object or body part into the child's body or making the child to do so. Then sexual harassment involves any action or gesture with sexual intent towards a child. Then we have child pornography. Now this depiction of sexually explicit conduct involving a child, including photos, videos and digitally created images. So all these are offences under the POCSO Act, and there are different punishments for different types of assaults under the POCSO Act. So this terms can be asked in the UPSC examination. So you need to know all these terms and the difference between them. I hope since you understood the article. Students, the title of the next topic is Raise Capital Expenditure by 25%. Focus on education is what the Confederation of Indian Industry has recommended. So in this article, you need to understand CII, capital expenditure and GST, right? You can map this under GS paper 3. A previous question was asked under the non-plan expenditure, about the non-plan expenditure. So these are some of the options given. What is the context that to boost Indian economic growth or Indian economy, the CII has recommended few suggestions to the government. What is CII? It is a non-governmental, non-profit, industry-driven and industry-managed organization. Very, very important term for your pre. It aims to foster an environment conducive to India's development. So it tries to create that atmosphere, environment which can help Indian economy grow. It collaborates with the industry, government, civil society through advisory and consultative process. It was established in 1895 and CII is based in New Delhi. All these terms are very, very important for your pre-examination. What is now talking about the recommendations of CII? Now, India's revised capital expenditure for 2023-2024 is 9.49 lakh crore. But what is capital expenditure? Whenever the government is expending or spending money on, let's say, the infrastructure, let's say roads, hospitals, skill development, land, buildings, machinery, this is known as capital expenditure. Now, capital expenditure is very important to boost the economic growth. The CII wants the government to increase the capital expenditure by 25%. What is this term windfall dividends? Now, windfall dividends is a term when a company gets unexpected profit. Now, this unexpected profit or unexpected rise in profits is not because of the decision of the bank, but because of the external factors. Then for such unexpected rise in profits, the tax that we levy is known as windfall profit tax. Again, such terms can be asked in the pre-examination. As I told you, the CII recommended that the CAPEX, capital expenditure, should be increased by 25%. Then the CII has also recommended that there is a need to integrate more with the global value chains. Now, as of now, the Indian goods are not integrated with the global value chains. Now, what is global value chains? Whenever any product is, let's say, manufactured, behind the manufacturing of a product, there are various stages, and all these stages can be taken place in different countries. Let's say, for example, it is designed in one country, it is manufactured in another country, it is assembled in another country. Every country has an expertise in different stages of production. It is very important for India to ensure that we also be a part of the global value chains. For that, we have to harmonize trade, investment and industrial policies so that we can attract investments and be a part of global value chains. Then CII has also recommended India to increase investment in education to 6% of India's GDP. And the formal skilling rate should go up to 25%. Then employment linked incentive. Now, this is a scheme where the government gives money to the employers. Employers are, for that matter, the ones who are into business, so that they can create more business opportunities and thus hire more and more number of people. Right? So this is employment linked incentive. Financial sector, privatizing 2 public sector banks. diversifying the funding sources for the non-banking financial institutions, reviewing the priority sector lending frameworks for the banks. Such steps the government should be taking is what the CII recommended. The next set of GST reforms should aim for three rate structure. As of now, we have four. One is 5%, 12%, 18%, and 20%. As of now, we have four rate structures. The CI wants India to reduce it to 3 rate structure and should also include petroleum products, electricity, real estate under GST. So these are some of the recommendations given by CII to the government. I hope you understood what is CII, Capital Expenditure, and its recommendations, right? Students, the title of the next topic is DGFT wants interest equalization scheme to extend, right? In this article, you need to understand DGFT and interest equalization scheme. You can map this under GS paper 3 under Indian economy. A previous year question, the service area approach was implemented under the purview of, these are the 4 options, right? So similar such question can be asked over the interest equalization scheme. The context is that the DGFT, that is the Director General of Foreign Trade, has had discussion with the Foreign Ministry and other stakeholders and is requesting to extend the interest equalization scheme. What exactly is this interest equalization scheme? Now, under the scheme benefits exporters, right? The ones who export the goods to other countries by providing subsidized bank credit rates, which means that whoever is granting loans to the exporters, the bank is also helping such exporters. What is subsidized bank credit rates? Let's say, for example, if the interest rates is let's say 5% or let's say 8%, some of the interest the government pays it. And this is to enhance the competitiveness of India's manufacturing sector. And it is primarily meant for labor-intensive sectors like construction, then we have agriculture, then we have garments, and then we have such sectors, right? Now, implementing authority. Who implements it? It is implemented by the RBI through various public and non-public sector banks. This is very, very important for your implemented by the RBI. Managing authority, it is jointly administered by DGFT and RBI. First implemented in 15 and now has been extended by 1 year. Again, 15 to 20 and now after 20 it is being extended by 1 year. So it is very important to understand what is this particular scheme. Mechanism, the 410 identified products and all MSMEs receive a 2% interest subvention on loans, and the MSME exporters, they receive 3%. So if let's say the interest rate is 5%, 2% the government pays. For the MSME, the government pays 3%. And all such exporters have to submit a certification from the external auditor to the concerned bank, right? So for individual, the limit is 10 crore, right? So this is how the mechanism is operated. Now, what is DGFT? It is an attached office to the Ministry of Commerce and is headed by the DGFT, Directorate General of Foreign Trade. It came into being in the year 1991. Now, it plays the role of a facilitator. There's a shift from prohibition and control of exports and imports to promotion of and facilitation of exports and imports. So, before 1991, right, we used to keep a strict control over the imports and exports. Now, we are just facilitating the exports and imports, and its headquarters is in New Delhi. I hope students you understood the article. Now, students, let us discuss few questions. Let's start with pre-based questions. The first question is with respect to interest equalization scheme. The first statement, the scheme benefits exporters by providing subsidized bank credit rates to enhance their competitiveness in the global market. Yes, this is exactly what we discussed. It is meant for the exporters. It is implemented by the DGFT. No, it is implemented by the RBI. Right? And then it is jointly monitored by Ministry of Finance, and no, it is jointly monitored by the DGFT and RBI. And that's the reason, students, the provisions of these schemes are important. Such type of questions can be asked in the pre-examination, which means 2 and 3 are incorrect. 1, that is option A, is the correct answer. Next, what does China's grey zone warfare tactics means? Direct military, diplomatic, simulated, yes. Simulated audiovisuals and psychological operations. Option C is the correct answer. I told you such type of questions can be asked in the exam. Third, what does venture capital mean? Now, venture capital mean a long-term startup capital provided to new entrepreneurs. So, whoever is new to the business, the capital being provided is known as venture capital. So, the key term is new entrepreneurs. Fourth, regarding POCSO Act, the POCSO defines a child as any person below, yes, was amended in 19 to introduce more stringent punishments including death penalty for committing sexual crimes, yes. The POCSO Act is gender specific and applies only to wrong. This is gender neutral. The Act mandates that the statement of the affected child must be recorded by a judicial magistrate, yes. 1, 2 and 4. Option C is the correct answer. Next is Vishaka Guidelines. Now, Vishaka Guidelines were issued in 1997 to address the issue of sexual harassment of women at the workplace. Yes. These guidelines were given by the Supreme Court. These guidelines mandate the formation of a complaints committee at all workplaces. Yes. The complaints committee must be headed by a woman and include at least one third party member from an NGO or other organization familiar with the issue of sexual harassment. Yes. The guidelines were incorporated into the Indian Penal Code under section wrong. They were incorporated under the POCSO Act or in the year 2013. They were not incorporated into the Indian Penal Code. It's a part of a legislation. So, fourth statement is incorrect. 1, 2, 3, option B is the correct one. Now, main space question. Discuss whether coalition governments slow down the economic reforms agenda in India. Now, again here, you need to define what is coalition governments. That is the alliance of 2 or more political parties. Try to highlight for examples like Janata Party, then National Front, etc. Now, in the body, you have to mention the merits of coalition governments. For example, it checks and balances the decisions of the government. It will boost economic reforms. It will boost reforms, right? So, this coalition governments is very important. Why? Because it will accommodate the voices of different stakeholders. So, these are some of the benefits. Challenges, it leads to delayed decision making which can affect the economic growth, right? At times, decisions can be taken in haste, right? Because of the decisions taken in haste, it might not be of the interest of the society. So, these are some of the challenges of the coalition governments, right? Then you have to compare with the single party. Now, single party governments, again, has both pros and cons, right? So, in the conclusion, you have to mention that yes, the coalition governments have got both advantages as well as disadvantages. But the most important thing is, when it comes to economic reforms, there are few factors and these factors need to be incorporated before any decision is taken. And this is how you can conclude the answer. I hope students have understood how to write the answer. And that's it, students, from our daily news analysis. I hope students have understood all the 5 questions that we have discussed in today's article. Students, if you want us to continue with our DNA session, then please do like, share and subscribe Narayana IAS Academy. Thank you so much.